Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show. All over the country, parents, teachers, and students are asking themselves, how are we going to safely reopen these schools? To talk about that today, Dr. Rebecca Good. She is the founder and superintendent of Legacy Preparatory Charter Academy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, you and I have known each other for several years now, and I think one of the things that first drew me to you is that you're an educator at heart, and you want to educate parents and teachers and students about the process. Mm-hmm. So where does that come from?
Well, both my grandmothers were teachers. Cousins, I have teacher cousins, principal cousins. I mean, it's in the genes.
It's in the genes. And so let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. And that must have, there wasn't a playbook for the pandemic. It wasn't like you could just pull it off the shelf and say, oh, hey, this is what we do with schools.
No. We were on spring break. And things were rumblings. We were in town. And Wednesday we started hearing. And then Thursday, I think, was the day that we said, okay, now we're having to shut down for next week. What does that mean for us as a district as far as serving kids, right? I was very proud of my crew. By Monday, we were ready to start serving meals, and by the following Monday, we were starting to deploy computers.
Wow.
And so we have been very nimble, and I've been very proud of my crew that we have been able to serve our families in an online setting, and also feeding them. Yes. and getting them social, emotional attention, because this has been a very stressful time for parents who were working from home, had kids, had to be teachers at home, all of that, plus worry about the COVID on
Yes.
top of that. And so we had to service our families and our staff. Let's not forget that we also had to take care of our staff in many ways the same way, making sure that they were supported, that they had social emotional interventions when needed as well.
Yes. So that brings us forward to today, in which we're pretty much 1 month away from you reopening. What's the plan? How are you going to do it?
So we have to do it remotely. We have a school in Collin County and a school in Dallas County. Dallas County says we can't open until after Labor Day in the building. We can open remotely, and so that's what many of us are choosing to do. We're not the only school that is choosing to open in August, but we are choosing to open remotely and to go 4 weeks. The TEA has said that all of us can go 4 weeks remotely while we transition, if allowed, back into the building. And I'll tell you, that's a little mathematical nightmare, because
Yes.
we're sending surveys out to parents asking if they're bringing their kids back or not. As is normal, we're getting about a 30% response rate. Well, when you have 1,700 kids,
Yes.
and only 600 kids worth have responded, then that is a problem. And so we need to be able to communicate better with our parents, which is now we're having to call, right? Because we've tried the old ways of email and Facebook and all that. Because imagine the nightmare if we're still social distancing and we only are allowed 12 in a classroom with one adult, and we prepare for the 600, but 800 show up. That's 20 more classrooms.
Yes. Well, I have to, you're talking about communication. I can't think of anybody who does it as well as you do. You started a show with our network, I want to say a year and a half ago, 2 years?
2 years next
ago.
month.
And why don't you explain the name of the show first?
Well, it's the Ask Dr. Be Good show. My name is Rebecca Good. I have my doctorate, and so I don't know how it came to me, but I started the Ask Dr. Be Good, and I have an app and where people can ask me questions and help them solve school problems.
I think it's wonderful. What episode are you up to?
90, I think.
90. That's incredible. And she just, she'll use Skype or Zoom, and she'll bring
Oh,
in,
I drive
bring
your
in
people
interviews.
crazy, yes. Your producers, if they live through me, probably are some of the best you have.
Oh, well,
because we have sometimes 5 or 6 kids in there, and right now we're streaming people in, and you guys have limited me to 2 streamers. And so now what I do is I bring my phone and I get the third person and I conference the third person in.
My team loves working with you. In fact, one of the episodes, I'm sure you remember this is about a year ago. You were interviewing in Spanish, and so we're going to run just a little clip of that.
Capture the essence of legacy in Spanish. So vamos a empezar. Primero vamos a saber quién está aquí con nosotros.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Ida Domínguez. Yo soy la coordinadora de programas especiales para Legacy Preparatory.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Javier Candelas. Yo formo parte del grupo.
Wow. So I don't speak Spanish, so I understood nothing. but that was, to me, I think that's the first Spanish language program we've ever produced on our network.
Well, we've done a couple of them. We should do more. Time is not our friend. We really should do more, and I'm gonna have to figure that out. But most of our staff speak Spanish. Most of our kids speak Spanish. Most of our parents speak Spanish. So that was my intent, was to have a very Spanish-friendly school district. Matter of fact, we teach English, Spanish, and Chinese dual language starting kinder through really all the way up, but very intentionally kinder through 6th grade. And so it is, because I did grow up overseas, I understand the need to understand languages from other cultures. It opens up your whole world when you have an international understanding.
Well, tell us some of the countries you've lived in.
Argentina, Mexico, Bolivia, Hong Kong, and Singapore.
Wow. A regular United Nation of destinations.
Well, I was very fortunate.
The other thing that impresses me is I've had a chance to contact some of my friends in the media, and they've interviewed you, and we've got a little clip of you talking to one of the anchors over at Channel 8. We're going to roll a little bit of that video, but let's talk about that. Is that something you enjoy doing? Do you like doing the media interviews?
I do, because they're almost like PSA announcements. I'm trying to inform parents about school. What I have learned is parents sometimes let schools have way too much power until there's a problem. And so they trust us too much sometimes, or they just aren't paying attention to us enough, and then something happens, and then it's like we have to start over. So it's my intent to get information, especially during this time, out to as many parents as we can, so that they can start asking more questions. Because really, if you've heard some of my interviews, I empower parents.
Yes.
I give parents homework.
Yes. I love that about you. And, and I think, how many interviews have you done in the last month, would you say?
A lot. 20?
20? Yeah.
Maybe.
And you're so good. And I've had a chance to watch many of them, and you really do have the heart of a teacher. You're trying to educate, even when you're talking to a journalist in another state where their situation may be different.
Well, what's been interesting for me in Oregon, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, Houston, they all really have the same exact situation. It really hasn't been different. And so they have the same concerns, the same questions, and so I've been giving the same homework. I've been telling parents, you've got to call the school. If they're not contacting you, you contact the school and ask them how they're going to keep that building safe if you want, to send your kid back.
Well, I think one of the things that the pandemic has done is made all of us appreciate the job of educators, because
nice.
Suddenly mom and dad had to become school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and now they know how difficult it is.
Yes. We hope that is something that doesn't stop, that the teacher's value has risen in parents' eyes and society's eyes also. It's not only parents. Because there's surveys out there from the 50s, and 80-90% of parents wanted their kids to be a teacher. But if you have that survey today, it's like 10%.
Wow. Well, my hat goes off to anybody in education, because I think it's one of the unsung heroes in our society.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if we can't educate our kids to be productive citizens, our economy is going to tank.
Yes.
In the future. And so I'm driven. One of the things that you may not know about me, that I am very passionate about becoming an advocate for public education and getting others to be an advocate for public education. We need to contact our legislators. We need to make sure that they understand that how we want them to prioritize, with just like the 2008 to 2011 recession, where they cut us $4 billion in Texas. We need to make sure that doesn't happen again. We just in the last legislative session got that money back with a lot more kids and higher need kids 9 years later. And so there's going to be that temptation to cut. And so if I can get a little army of pub ed advocates through all of this work, and who start calling their legislators to help them remember how to prioritize when it comes time to cut, then I will have done my job.
Outstanding. You've been a great guest. We're going to put your website up so people
Thank you.
can get in touch. It's legacypreparatory.com, the website. Dr. Rebecca Good, Dr. Be Good, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.